Okay. Please let me know if you can hear me. Hi, Sophie. And definitely welcome to the new people. We've got a bunch of them. Great. Thank you. Hello, everybody. We're going to let everyone filter in. We're a little bit early. Not much early, but very good. Thank you, thank you, thank you for letting me know. Raythe Rangers. I love that. I love that as a group name. So awesome. For those of you catching this for the first time, welcome, welcome. Those of you coming back, it's so good to see all of your little names and hear from you. Bunny Hell as a name is just freaking awesome. Well, I love the Crimson Sorcerer too. That's nice. Hello, Eleanor. Hi, hi, hi. So glad you guys are here. Kat is on vacation, but she managed to pretty much get everything set up before she left for the auto emails to go out. Hello, Lily. Oh, Bunny, you're in a restaurant right now, but you'll listen later. Good deal. Replay crew, we love you too. Nice to see you on YouTube. That's why we have YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook that we're doing it on. So whatever's easiest for you guys. Pretty much. James, you did make it. We're just letting people like filter in for a little while before we start fully doing our thing. Nice, nice, nice. Thank you, Lisa. I'm so glad you are. Next week at this same time, we will be doing, I don't know, I guess it's a premiere where you'll literally be able to do comments while the last chapter of Dragon's Reign is running, and then there will be after stuff, and then we will literally be finding out what the new podcast is with some very exciting things to show you. Lily, you're going to a wedding. It is wedding season. I'm so glad I'm a little bit old now, so I don't have to go to those anymore, because honestly, I hate weddings. Although we're going to have a wedding next week. Even if you haven't, even if you haven't been listening to the whole thing, I think you can follow along to a certain extent. Yeah, I'm so glad. Yay! No, Crimson Sorcerer, the next podcast is not going to be Ghost Neo Tokyo, considering the YouTube like nixed that one so fast. No. Elder said, I had a dream that it was Elven King's Blade. Nope. Don't you remember that it can't be that one? Lily says she's only going to the wedding because of great food. That is true. Although most of the ones I've been to have had terrible food. Rubber chicken. Rubber chicken, anyone? Yeah. I don't know why, but I've always, maybe because like so many of the people I know get divorced. It's never been a really good party. Hello, Melody. Bug wants to know if anyone watches Our Flag Means Death. I have not yet. Although I really like Taika Waititi. Yes, Lisa Joy, there's lots to listen to. I get it now because I don't know if Kat has yet had a chance to remove the sex chapters, and it's unfortunately going to have to be for all of it. Which I do wanna talk about since we in about a minute, about all of that and get your questions and stuff for that. I know a lot of people have had questions, and I do wanna talk about that because that's sort of important for this live reading. I mean, not today's live reading, but in general for this series and Dragon's Reign and then the next series. So, I like that you had Italian for your wedding reception, Toru. That sounds a lot better. Hello, Trixon. Okay, so I do wanna discuss, a little bit for those of you who don't know or who didn't see our YouTube video or who didn't realize that chapter 139 was hugely truncated. As some of you know, um, I had put out chapter 1s, and in this case, of Ghost Neo Tokyo, I actually did 10 chapters because I was loving doing it, and there's an early sex chapter in that one. And I had honestly thought I'd read YouTube's terms of service and, Spotify's and all that, and I thought we were okay because it's not video. It's just reading. But no, not only did they not just, age gate it or demonetize it or anything like that, they literally nuked the video and sent Kat a strike for our channel saying basically like you violated our terms of service on sex. And it's so broad. Now when I was really reading it, I'm like, yeah, I guess I see that. Literally, like they nuked it. And if you get too many of those, you can lose your channel and you can be unable to post. And that would be the most horrendous thing because unlike when we began this thing with Rain 3 years ago, I actually have had something massively produced that I need YouTube for. And I couldn't afford to lose our channel. So basically, this is how it's gonna go. Kat, to the extent she hasn't already, will be going in and removing all sex chapters from Dragon's Reign and Empire of Stars. They will be removed from YouTube, from Spotify, from everything. Anything that is public and that is on another, platform other than Raythe Reign will not have any sex chapters from now on. All the ones that are out there will be nuked, and from now on, they will be removed. And the only way you'll be able to get the full uncut versions is if you are a member of Raythe Reign or you purchase the audiobook, because we actually will have audiobooks of the next podcast coming up. It's highly amazing and produced thing. It's so gonna be worth it. But unfortunately, for the public podcast, you will not be able to hear anything sexual in it. We will cut it as fine as we can to leave as much of the story as we can, and we will identify those chapters very clearly, that you'll know that something's missing from. As I was going through and editing some of those, I recognized that there's a big section of chapters for one of them where it's gonna be like, "Oh, sorry, sex chapter. Nah, another sex chapter, and no, another sex chapter." But, we have to do it because we cannot lose our channels. So, um, right now, just so you know, if you listen to 139 on YouTube or Spotify and you're like, "Wow, that was short." Well, that's because half of it is missing. I'm not sure what Kat put to indicate that. I think it's in the description for sure. But essentially, the only way you can listen to chapter 139 in full is to join Raythe Reign right now. We're doing $1 for a month. It's actually a really good idea to do that now because a new podcast is coming out. And you'll get advanced on that. But that's the only way. It is very sad, but that's their rules. And the problem with mature content is that these sites make a lot of money off of it, but they don't really want to admit they make a lot of money off of it. So they have to have these very vague lines. They know it when they see it. They impose it in ways that don't make sense. I hear oftentimes from, listeners like, "Well, I heard, someone else and it's far more explicit than yours." And it'd be like, "Yeah, but that doesn't mean that it's not against the rules. It just means they haven't found them yet." Because remember, we have had Dragon's Reign up for 3 years with no problems, and someone would point to our chapters and say, "Look, there's explicit sex in Dragon's Reign, and they're still up. What's the problem?" And I would say to them is, it wasn't a problem until it was, namely until somebody reported us. They must have reported us, and that's a listener. So I really find it weird that you would be listening to a gay romance story and then report it based on the fact that it has sex in it. A little weird, but it happens. That's how this goes, to be perfectly honest with you. And we just can't. And by the way, Spotify has the same rules, all of them do. They're very vague, and we just cannot lose our ability to post. So we have to remove it. One thing, and I'm sure it was none of you, it's probably none of you listening later, but I do want to talk to you guys about a little bit about stuff. Disappointment is poison. Disappointment leads people to say and do things they wouldn't do under other circumstances. The staff and I, the team and I, have received some very, very nasty emails from people regarding this. Um, I really find it unbelievable that after getting 70 hours worth of free content, that they feel betrayed, that half a chapter is gone, not through our doing, but through basically YouTube's, that they believe that they can speak to anyone in that manner. Especially since we're only asking for $1. And by the way, of that dollar, I think we get 35 cents. So it's not a money-making opportunity, guys. Wasn't what I wished to do, believe me. But I am telling you right now, if for some reason, if you are listening to Empire of Stars right now or later on, and you've been tempted to do this to me, to someone else, because you are disappointed, do not. That is so not acceptable. Um, I mean, it's just not. It's not acceptable. And by the way, that you are not a fan if that is what you are doing. Um, I mean, really, you are not a fan. You are not a good person if you're doing that. Don't do it. And I can honestly tell you, there have been a bunch. And knowing what I've just told you about how this all came about, I'm sorry, some of you are shocked and like, what the hell? But others are like, yeah, I've seen that happen. And I'm going to say something that is not going to be popular, but I have to say it because I think it's really important. The only people who have a complaint to be made to me are the people who pay me money for things. Namely, if I don't live up to my members' expectations, they have the right to complain. But if you are listening to a free podcast, you do not have the right to complain. We could have just stopped honestly posting at any point in time, and that you might be disappointed it's not there, but we have no duty to keep doing anything. And in this case, believe me, it was not what we intended and not what we wanted. But let's say that I did decide that I wanted to hold back the sex chapters for money. Let's say I did. I could do that. That's my rights. You might think that's douchey, but truthfully, we've had hundreds of members sign up to listen to chapter 139, who were like, well, I should have been doing this before or whatever, whatever. I wasn't going to ever do that. I don't do that. I do give everyone the chance to listen and go through. And I understand what it's like not having money. God knows I had those same decisions. But to as somebody who has been in that situation, I realized that when I wasn't paying for something, I don't have a right to certain things. And I certainly don't have the right to treat people like these people were doing in the emails to my staff and me. It was very, very disappointing. And I don't know if they simply are just so in love with the story that they weren't thinking right, but that's crazy. I mean, we've given you over 70 hours of free content. This is half of a chapter. not through our own doing. And I would think that everyone would know why we had to do it. But again, free podcast. It's a completely different situation. But and my members have never spoken to me in that way, and they pay money for access to things. And I've fallen down on certain things, and they have never treated me like that. And they're paying money. I mean, I have people who have paid thousands of dollars to be on Raythe Rain over the years. And they would have a legit reason to be like, hey, what the hell, Raythe? But a free podcast where we are getting rid of half a chapter because we are unable to provide it to you and only asking for $1, which most people can't afford over the entire I mean, I can't fathom that. And it was, I don't know, it was disheartening. I was not happy, as many of you noted in my video on this about PrudeTube. I was not happy. I was clearly disappointed. But even if I hadn't been, even if I had been like, well, this is what we're doing because we want you guys to sign up and we're twisting your arm, I don't I don't know. I just don't understand that. Um I would say and the thing is that those of you who are listening right now who are on this stream are not those people. But I'm doing this for those who will listen to it later. And I just, for those of you who know people who have done this online, don't do it. It's not acceptable. And I was very, very upset by what I saw people treating Kat like, to be honest with you. People come to me with crap all the time, but this was not acceptable. What I found sort of funny was one guy, after he swore at her, basically was like, I'm done supporting you. And he's not a member. How is he supporting? Listening to a free thing? I don't even know how he thinks that's support. Or, the other people saying that we should go through like hoops to get to some like rando podcasting service, which by the way has the exact same rules as YouTube. I'm like, well, what? You can't pay $1 for 70 hours worth of content? I'm like, how is that even an issue? But I know that there are people who legitimately can't, but that number is vanishingly small overall, considering our small audience. So it was very disappointing to me to see that kind of reaction. And especially since I feel like we've gone out of our way to make sure that everyone, no matter if they can pay or not, gets as much as they can of the story, which quite frankly, not a lot of other people would do. So just keep that in mind for those of you that this applies to. For those of you who it does not, which is like 99.99% of you, just ignore it. But I did want to talk about that because honestly, to see such abusive, to be honest with you, such abusive behavior towards the staff, towards me, towards everything. It was really shocking. It shouldn't have been, I guess, because it's the internet, right? And I don't know, but at the same time, I've always had such luck, and this is luck is the right word. The Raythe Rain members have always been so kind for the most part. I think I've had to ban 2 members from commenting, and you know why? It was because they were so passionate that they just sort of like lost their minds and had to argue their points. But that's it. Thousands upon thousands of people, and I've never had to do that. Hardly. And I mean, you guys have just been so great, and we don't have a problem with the commenters, even on YouTube normally, but it's always those few. And it was more than a few. Let's put it that way. And it was bothering me. It was really, really bothering me. So anyway, oh, it was definitely interesting. So again, to explain, because of YouTube, Spotify, our iHeartRadio, all of it, their rules, there will be no sex chapters on the public podcast, on the free podcast. You will have to sign up for Raythe Rain, where you will be able to stream it with all in its glory. In fact, the next podcast, immediately upon the day of the first public podcast going up, Raythe Rain members will have the first 15 chapters, the first volume, to stream uninterrupted at high quality. And you will be able to purchase the audiobook, $25 for non-members, $10 for members for that first volume. All high quality, all beautifully done, all this kind of stuff. It's going to be worth it. But it can't be basically any other way. And we just can't do it. And it's not our choice. It's all these other companies' choices. So I'm putting Claude's question up on the video here. Do you consider a move copy the live readings to the podcast sections on the site? Klaus, I think that's a really good question. The way that the stream works there, it would cut in and out of Dragon's Reign and whatever's going to come next. So I don't know how we're going to do it. I'm going to see if we can't do a second podcast stream so that members can get every chapter read, even for the live streams, even for like all the sexy times. Because I control Raythe Rain and I'm able to, have like twincest and father son incest and all this other kind of stuff that I want on it, which is like I'm not able to do anymore. I thought that Spotify is more open to this kind of content. No, they are not. They are not, guys. They are not. Gay equals porn, my friends. Even if they were more open to het stuff, they're definitely not open to this. And Cersei just, Sophia says something fun like this. There's also Not Safe for Work manga in the RR story. We will actually be having a manga of the next podcast too. Yeah, iTunes as well. Absolutely, there will be nothing in the public podcast. No sex. So, yeah, every single thing you can think of. Yeah, I mean, Trixon, you were right about that. Reason why I thought we would be okay is, like I said, there are no visuals, and this is nothing more than I would have on Amazon or through Audible, which, by the way, is sold through, Apple, it's Amazon, and everywhere. Why is this a problem? It's a problem. It's, believe me when I say it's disappointing, but it isn't surprising, I guess. I just hope that all they would do is demonetize it. I mean, we only get, a few ads on our thing ever. I mean, we did open it up to advertising. So, Trixon says, I don't talk about my stories, but I write fan ones. And yeah, you have to be careful. Yeah, no, this is the next one. Sorry. Trying to get this to show some of these comments that are great so everyone can see them. Please send them to marketing@raytherain.com if you have fan art. That will be put in our monthly newsletter. There's also this Discord. If Sophie, if you could put that up, there's some wonderful stuff there, but we'd really like you to send it to us. That will be, I don't get YouTube because there are way worse things on the platform. Of course there are. They can't possibly monitor everything. But once you are on their radar, you are on their radar. Does that make sense? It's like we got by for the long time and we were fine. God, I sound so like I love you guys. You make my day. Like the readers, how can I put this? If Raythe Rain is doing well, I am flying high. If I get, emails where people are upset, that dampens my day no matter what else is going on. Raythe Rain is like, just how I feel about life. So it's very important. So when something goes wrong there, I'm much more upset than, let's say, something goes wrong as my job as an attorney. It's like, okay, whatever. I have Raythe Rain. It doesn't matter. How's the Diet Coke doing? I have 2 Diet Cokes beside me with lime. I'm very happy. I think, like I said, if only Diet Coke would sponsor me. If only they just give me free Diet Coke. I think, like I said, I think disappointment is poison for some people. I think it really and truly makes them not think clearly, especially with something that they care about. But at the same time, it's like you are attacking the people who make the thing that you love. And to think that my keeping back half of 139 was a cash grab. I mean, it's the most ludicrous thing I have ever heard. Ever heard. Um, Literally, that's what they were like, "It's a cash grab, you're trying to do a cash grab." What? What? Yeah, your 35 cents, sir, will definitely be worth it so that I upset people and make those who legit can't sign up not be able to listen to it. Like, yeah, okay, sure. I mean, and in all honesty, I don't understand that, and I would have been fine. I literally would have been fine if they had just been disappointed rather than angry and cruel, to the staff. It's like, I don't pay Cat enough money to deal with that. Um, it's like, wow. Thank you, Trixon, for being a member. Like, legit, like, we try to make sure that the membership is fairly priced. We haven't raised the prices on it for 12 years. We keep adding to it. I don't take stuff away. I really think about members first because that's what's really important. I mean, I don't know. It just blew my mind, man. Um, I am sad that there is no way for, channels like YouTube and stuff to really give us a chance to let adults listen to what adults want to listen to. Um, I don't understand, like, even age gating it, you can't, we're not putting this out to someone you just can't do it. It's really, really interesting, and, not everything is up to us, but literally, Crimson Sorcerer. And I know this isn't popular. Believe me, I came from a time where we kept our house so cold my hands hurt because we didn't have enough money. But I don't begrudge artists for making money for their work either. I mean, to make Dragon's Reign and do all this stuff, the members are paying for that. You've got to understand that this is being paid for by someone, not by those who are listening to it, but by the members who have made it possible. And we're using that to bring people into the membership. But if someone else wanted to make like something they loved and made it like paywall, that's fine in my mind because that's how you got to do it sometimes. So yeah, you may not you're like people are paying for this. It's just not maybe you who's just watching it. It's the members who are paying for this to make it happen. Yeah, I just don't get it. I mean, I get it, but yeah, this is, like, ridiculous. I you know, I and I guess I wanna speak to those people, and it's like, I get it that your life may be very hard, and this may be the one bright spot in it. I'm not trying to make you feel bad or not have you be on here, but in all honesty, this is, like, not acceptable. Um, I mean, it bums me out. Believe me, it's a lot more work for us to edit these things, and then we're basically, how shall I say it? Um, we're basically having to disappoint people each and every time we got to put this out, and we will constantly get from new people that same thing. It's a cash grab. You won't give it to me. Like, no, that wasn't our intention. But quite frankly, like, if you do you like the content? Do you want to support the artists and the author and the people behind it? If you can afford to purchase it, that's great. I mean, I just don't get that. So I'm enough of that. But I'm just like going through some of these lovely comments. I just yeah, I don't know. I mean, and here's the thing, there's some wonderful, amazing free content out there for everybody, and it is amazing that these artists put it out there for free, but they normally have some revenue, and like I said, Raythe, the membership is what pays for the podcast in reality. Um, but, I think that we've got to normalize again paying for art, and I know that that sounds a bit much coming from an artist, but I'm gonna be honest with you, think about, like, when do your art projects get done when you're working a full-time job? Well, they don't because you don't have the time, effort, energy to do them, and I try to, like, pay for all the art I get. I like doing that because I wanna support them. So Eleanor has a good point. A few people are worried about how their membership will appear on their bank statements. Yeah. Um, it just appears like Wraith Rain. Honestly, Eleanor, the few people that I've had do that are normally children. I know one who's like worried about what their mom will think. And that again is like if you're worried about what your mom will think, that means that you're probably not old enough to be on the site. To be honest with you. They may or may not. I mean, and that's part of that. That makes me nervous, to be honest with you. So, yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. And the whole thing is that we wanted to give it to everybody. I mean, legit, if we wanted to actually, someone had asked me at the very beginning of the podcast a long time ago, if we were going to withhold the sex chapters. I'm like, no. I'm like, no. We normally wouldn't. I don't like doing that. I believe that if you like something that you're gonna purchase it, whether or not, you get all of it and, like, that kind of thing. Ah, I think that, yeah, it's like we're not doing anything about the editing. I mean, we got a few of those people like, "Could you go back in and read it?" No, we cannot. Although the next thing is gonna actually be totally and utterly professional. I think that that's just true. If fandom broke reality? That's a good question. No. I would just have them think about it like art isn't created in a vacuum, it's created by people. Why would you be shitty to the people who create the stuff you love? And I don't know, man. I mean, having been there my whole life, until I became a lawyer and even after that, I mean, I became a lawyer not because I was loving it. I became a lawyer because I was sick of being poor. I was very, very, very lucky that I was able to get a massive scholarship back in the day and go. Um, but I didn't say to myself, "Well, I wanted to help people for sure as a lawyer, I also wanted to have a stable income because I had lived poor and it sucks. I know it sucks. So I yeah, like I said, disappointment is poison to many, many people. Yeah, they don't. I mean, they just I don't know. And I know that's not who your audience truly is. It was just there was a lot of them, and there's more than you would think. And I think and that bothered me. And like I said, like Kat's put passing these she tries to not bother me with a lot of the emails she gets. To be honest with you, she tries to deal with it herself, And to be honest with you, I felt terrible that she was dealing with that, especially right before vacation. Yes, Sophie, there will be an exquisite new manga to go along with the next podcast. And it will be a prequel to that podcast. So it's going to be really cool, which I'm very excited to share. That's going to be that's not going to be first out of the gate. We literally have taken 7-8 months to do this thing that we're doing, and it's not done. Um, let's see here. Just going through the actual comments, and I'm just showing them to you. It is a huge problem. It is a huge problem. I think I've told the story about the banks, which is fun. When we first put up Raythe Rain, I couldn't get a credit card processor. They said I was running a porn site. And I said, wait a minute, what? I'm not running a porn site. If I were back in that day, maybe I'd be able to get more money. I was like, come on, I'm not, and even to this day, until we switched over, we were getting a higher rate and basically they would take a greater amount of the money because they figured that all of you were going to claim you were defrauded and never read that Raythe Rain stuff. So that's always an interesting thing. It's it's gotten better, but it's gotten worse. It's like we all know in the U.S. anyway, things have not been great. Fan art, fan fiction. Again, hopefully Sophie will put up the link to the Discord. There's fantastic stuff there. Okay. Okay. So I'm still going through chats. I'm sorry. Well, one Diet Coke would probably be the equivalent of the buck that we basically are asking for right now for a month. So that's what we're doing. 1 month. It's and you can only use it to the end of June. Yes, it is supposed to be like a Patreon, although there's so much stuff there. I think with WordPress you should be safe because it's not being hosted by WordPress. WordPress is just basically the template you're using, the software. So you should be fine. But if you're doing it on YouTube, if you're doing it on Facebook, if you're doing it on Spotify, if you're doing it anywhere. Yeah, overpriced handmade moose. I know. It's like, are you crazy guys? We've thought about it, but we haven't had that much of a problem, like, thankfully, getting, like, eyeballs, but it's all good. Hold on 1 second here. Okay. This is awesome. I think it's just, they talk about parasocial relationships. Well, I feel like I have a social relationship with you guys. You don't feel like strangers to me. You feel like people I know. I mean, to be honest with you, it feels like I'm just talking to a bunch of friends online. So I don't think of myself as like, I don't know, a creator. That sounds so weird. Like I write this stuff that I enjoy it. And so basically, how can I say this? That's why it's so disappointing and like shocking. Maybe because I don't see that line. It's probably not healthy or something. You're all like, we just want you to write, Wraith. We don't really want the rest of you. But that's why for me it's always so jarring, and because we've been so lucky to have such nice people honestly be a part of this. Um Absolutely. I think people should. Art, think about it. What makes everyone happiest? I can tell you what makes me the happiest is, all these amazing shows and books and movies and everything. That's what makes me happiness. Art makes me happy. Yes, I love my table, my chairs, my apartment. That's all good. But I mean, art is what makes things the best. I mean, that's just what it is. So, yes. All right. Everything is running, like, really slow. I'm trying to get it up. So, okay, I'm just gonna try to get through a few more comments here. Yes, my being Kat wouldn't, like, edit that out because she thought it was funny. The pet thing especially. Okay. I hate that I'm missing all these had these awesome comments here. I'm trying to, like, read through them. Okay. So, no, this is a good question that's come up here. Um, Maybe this isn't time or place, Polly, but if I send you $12, I can get Wraith Rain through this month next year? No. It's $100 for a year. Um, it's $1 right now for a month. So no, you get $1 for a month, and it's only for the first month, and then it bills you at $9.95 a month after that. But James, if you give $100, you can get Wraith Rain for a year. So this is just as special for people so they can listen to 139, the full of it. All right. Now I think I am going on to wonderful, wonderful things, which is I will finally get to the point of why you all are here, most of you, which is to listen to chapters of Empire of Stars. Let me just take a sip of Diet Coke here. All right. So, for those of you who are new to this, how this works is I am going to read probably in one or two parts each chapter. You can make comments the entire time, but obviously won't um I won't be commenting on those until I take a break from the reading. I try to do it in character. We'll see. My allergies are terrible, even though I've taken like a massive like Dayquil pill each time now, but I try. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see if we go. But here we go. Let's do this thing. Chapter 64. Splitting Up. Jace was everywhere and nowhere. He was sitting in the control room of the Maturin compound. He was also a mech, piloting off at the top of the roof and flying towards the cool. But he was also watching the battle through the thousands of cameras in the defense grid above Hassian, not to mention firing the BFG whenever hives happened to get into range. He was in other places too. He was in the cameras and comms that filled the section of Hastian where the Cool had landed, noting whenever the Cetixes or mules showed themselves and tracking them. He could hear himself communicating with Khoth and the others that held onto his mech legs. Dr. Hader, I'm going to let you off up high so you can pick off Cool. They're looking for ways past the compound's defenses, and some of them are going to have to show their ugly faces. I want you to make them even uglier. Perfect, pilot. I won't let any Cool get past me, Dr. Hader responded with quite a bit of eagerness. And to think, the general in Toshkin had sold him to Jace and Koth as just a linguist. The man was a miracle. The mech's large engines lifted its heavy armored body, not to mention his passengers, up into the air with ease. He flew over to a building opposite the entrance to the compound and landed on the roof. Dr. Hayter jumped down and immediately hustled over to the edge. He crouched and put his eye to the scope of his Dragavus. He began moving in a fluid fashion as he scanned the area below. Just as Jace was taking off again, he heard the whine of a powerful Dragvis shot. One of the cool ascetics that had ambled a little too far out from cover was shot in the head and lay dead in the street, its acidic blood smoking. I told you he was a good sniper, Davies laughed. It was a dark, triumphant laugh. This was a man who had seen death, Jace realized, and he expected to see more of it. He wanted to cause it that day, too. Jace understood. The cool being here was a complete affront. Humans are known to be violent, Typhon remarked. Your ability to kill with ease will not necessarily endear you to our people. Oh, Justiciar, everyone loves a soldier when their homeworld's being attacked. They might just think, those humans are violent, but maybe that's just what we need, Davies responded. Let's bring a few more on board. A sniper is all about control, not violence, Koth retorted to Typhon. If a Thafel made that shot, it would be spoken of in the words of our poets. You are right, Koth. I just wish that our people could have seen the pilot's ability to fix things before they saw his ability to destroy. Typhon answered almost sadly. But sometimes fear is better than love. Against the cool? Damn straight, Davies said. Jace was also sending a message to Thama. Flight Commander, the Cool are taking cover beneath bridges and inside buildings. Your ship can't help anymore in this fight. I need you on the ground. Here's a landing zone. I want in on this fight. Thama's eyes narrowed. Have they talked about pulling a Stallis? Hannah piped in and explained. Stallis was a jewel of the Alliance, a planet of great peace, learning, and lots of Altair tech. Certain cool specimens were brought there for study. Unfortunately, there was a release that led to an unchecked chain of infection. That doesn't sound good. Jace frowned mentally at least. No, it wasn't. In order to stop the chain, they walled off the main city where they believed all the infections were taking place and, oh dear, they destroyed the city and all the people inside, Gehenna said with a stream of crying faces floating up before his mind's eye. Wait, was everyone infected in the city? Jace asked her, but he already knew the answer. No, but they couldn't risk it. Yet, unfortunately, despite this terrible choice, the infection already spread beyond the city's borders, she continued. The Alliance ended up having to destroy all of Stallis and shoot down any ships that tried to leave. It's considered a grave world now. Nothing and no one lives there. They couldn't risk the infection spreading, Jace realized. If even one ship with one infected person had gotten to another planet, what happened on Stallis would have happened there. Koth had told him this before, but he hadn't fully appreciated it. They had managed to protect Earth by overcoming the cool there. Everyone had been quarantined, and once it was certain they had a clean bill of health, they had been allowed to leave and go home. But Sunrise was isolated. Stallis had been a city world somewhat like Coruscant and Star Wars, so it had been impossible to even attempt such a similar program there as they had in Sunrise. Yalor was somewhere between Stallis and Sunrise. Jace was grateful that the Maturin compound was located in a mostly business district near the courts, which were closed today. It was the day of rest for the Thafel, a weekend, so the streets and buildings were mostly empty. But while the Maturin compound could resist the Cool's attempts to enter, at least for a time, there were other small residential buildings nearby. Though Jace had sent the AIs to strengthen their defenses, unlike the compound, there were no great shields that would keep them safe. The Cool would be able to get inside. Jace could almost imagine it now. The Cool, finding their way into the Maturin compound blocked, would take prisoners. They would release those prisoners If only Jace would be handed over to them, they wouldn't infect a living soul so long as they had the pilot. That would be a lie, of course. Even if they turned him over, at least one of their kind would secrete themselves on Hastian and Leolora's secret places and infect the populace. It would be an unforgettable lesson for the Alliance. Nowhere was safe, and nothing could stop the Cool. So there was but one course of action. None of the Cool could live, and those hives above, they had to be utterly destroyed too. Then he'd have to do something about the master gates. But first, death. Jace, Thama called, using his name instead of title. We really need to not have that happen. Hassian is a grave world. I won't let that happen, Thama, Jace assured her. We won't. Now, I need you to guard that residential block. It's the nearest one to the landing site. They'll head there first. I know I likely don't have to say this, but none of the Cool can live. Understood, pilot, she answered grimly. We need to make them pay for doing this, Jay said, both to her and himself. Diet Coke break here. He heard, or more like sensed, her pulling back on the yoke and the deepening growl of the Paladin's engines as she landed in a small square just outside of the nearest residential building. She set the ship to fire on any Cool that approached, while she grabbed a Dragvas, Rahir, and some proximity mines, and a full belt of chemical grenades that would eat through the Cool's outer shells. Never leaving the ship without those again, Jace thought. Thelma hustled out of the ship and down the gangway. She set up the proximity mines all around the front entrance. Any Cool who made it that far would likely end up without some limbs. The entrance was covered by a half-moon shaped section of calcanth. Once she was done mining, Thelma jumped up, grabbed the lip of the calcanth, and pulled herself up on top of it. Then she laid low and rested the stock of the Dragvas on the covering's edge. She was ready for whatever was going to come. A curtain twitched open in one of the apartments up above. Jace immediately connected with the cameras and comms in that unit. He witnessed a female Thafel, he guessed to be a mother, take down a Rahir from where it proudly was resting on a stand. She unsheathed the glowing blade and looked across the room at her young daughter. The little girl was clutching the curtains as she peeked out into the street. The look on the mother's face was one of determination. She would die before she'd let the Cool get her to her daughter. Thama and the rest would ensure that didn't happen. Pilot, how many Cool are there on the planet? Khoth asked. Jace relished the sound of his lover's voice. It calmed and anchored him. 50 remaining after Thama's run, or wait, actually 49 now after the Doc's kill. 50. Jace heard Khoth's father breathe the word as he also shared the locations of the Cool with the control room, as well as with Khoth and the others. So many in one ship. That is not normal, surely. He's right. It's not normal, Jace, Gehenna informed him. The Cool must have stuffed those ships to the gills, wanted to make it harder for us to kill them all in time, Jace realized. It does not matter how many the Cool send. We will defeat them. Amana's voice was firm, but he heard the desire to be out there, doing something instead of here just watching. But to have so few against so many, Khoth's father was understandably worried. I'm sending everything we're doing to the ground troops, Jace told them. We could send troops out, Amana suggested. No. 2 big reasons. We lower the shields, even for an instant, and the Cool could get in. Second, the more people you send, the more chances the Cool have to infect someone. We can handle this until more help arrives, Jace told her. And he sincerely hoped that was true. If that changes, I will let you know. We will need to keep track of our kills and where the Cool are at all times, Khoth said. No problem, got it covered, Jace assured him. The AIs are tracking and tagging. We'll know everywhere they go and what their vital signs are. What is the plan for us? Typhon asked. I'm going to be dropping each of you off near a cluster of Cool, Jace said as he powered through the air, hiding his mech body behind as many tall buildings as he could. We normally fight in pairs, Khoth said, and he grimaced. Because if one person gets infected, the other will handle it? Jace guessed carefully. Yes, pilot, Khoth answered. And there was so much more in that answer than it said. Handling it meant killing one's partner, making sure that they didn't spread the disease or get taken to a hive. Jace so wanted to stay by Khoth's side, but the Cool were spread out and they couldn't take on one group at a time. It had to be all at once. Jace landed and Davies got off. He checked his weaponry with the same expert efficiency that he'd shown in the compound. I have sent the group you need to handle to your comm, Davies, Jace told him. A group of them are in the sewers, trying to find a way to access the compound underground. You can access the sewer through this building. A map appeared on Davies' comm as well, showing him the easiest way to meet up with the three Cool. Be quick, be quiet, go for the head, Jace told him. Davies gave a brief nod. It will be done, pilot. Then, without any hesitation, he sprinted off. Khoth and Typhon watched him go. They show no fear, Typhon remarked as Jace started to fly to the next location. Merely because we have emotions, Typhon, doesn't mean we're ruled by them. At least not all the time, Jace said. Jace landed 3 streets over, but not on the ground. He clung to the side of the building and used a laser to melt the glass of the window on the 4th floor. Typhon swung himself off onto the ground open floor. He was already reviewing the material that Jace had sent him on the comm. There's a group on the far side of this building. They are setting up jamming technology. They hope to interfere with the shield, Jace explained. Are you able to understand their communications? Typhon asked, even as he unslung his Dragvas. To an extent, but these are educated guesses, Jace admitted. And where will you and Khoth go? Typhon asked. We're going to take on the main horde. Hold on 1 second here. Meow. Jace explained. The biggest group are clustered under that overpass near the southern flank of the compound. It just looked like an overpass to Jace because it had that familiar sweeping pattern of many highways, but this was an overpass of trees and other vegetation that wound its way throughout the city. It wasn't for cars. All of those flew. They're trying to use some kind of goo to short out the force field and blast through the wall. Goo. Typhon lifted an eyebrow. It's something they discrete from. Well, it doesn't matter. It's goo. Typhon simply nodded. Cool technology is mostly, well, biological. The goo is produced and pumped into canisters about a foot long, see? Jace explained and sent an image of an octagonal container that had crystalline sides and solid tops to both Typhon and Khoth. The goo glowed a neon green. If the shields hadn't been fully up to snuff in the compound, that stuff would have been eating through the wall now. I am more grateful to you than I can say, Typhon pronounced with a bow. I don't know about that. They only came here because of me, Jace admitted. They could have wiped us out at any time, Typhon said. You just ripped away the illusion of safety. And then he was running down the hallway, and Jace pushed them off of the wall. I'm going to set you down behind them, Khoth, and I will then draw their attention. Up close and personal, Jace explained. While they're focused on me, I will bring death upon them, Khoth stated. Exactly, Jace said. Hold on, I need another drink. Ah. They were nearly at the landing spot. Jace grew more and more tense as he thought of letting Khoth off and watching the Thel commander walk away from him and towards danger. Maybe they should stay together. Or better yet, maybe Khoth should hang back while Jace took out all of the Cool. It wasn't like he could get hurt as a mech, right? So it would make more sense for Khoth to stay out of the fray until he was absolutely needed. Your thoughts are appearing on my comm, Khoth said softly. What? No, that's not. Shit, Jace groaned. I'm in so many places at once, I didn't realize that my thoughts were being recorded somewhere. You told me you didn't think we could defeat the Cool without me, Khoth said, carefully, as Jace zoomed around a building's edge. Yeah, but I guess there are no buts. I just need you to be safe, Jace admitted. I promised to come back to you. I keep my promises, Khoth said. I know. This will not be the last time we will have to fight, Khoth reminded him. but it will not be the last time we are together either. You're right, just last-minute jitters, Jace said. Jace saw the landing spot. It was about a quarter mile from the spot where the Khoth were clustered with their goo bombs. The Khoth were so focused on their work that they only had a handful of their number watching their back. Khoth would be able to take them out, especially if Jace was making a lot of noise the other way. He landed with a clank that was far louder than he'd hoped, but none of the Khoth guards moved from their positions, so the sound hadn't carried that far. Khoth jumped down from his legs and walked around to his front, even though Jace could see him no matter where he was standing. Still, it was sweet that he wanted to talk to Jace face to face, so to speak. Khoth unsheathed his Twahir and regarded Jace with all the somber seriousness of the Thel warrior he was. I will see you soon, Jace, Khoth said. Yes, you will. Remember not to start attacking until I have their attention, okay? Understood, pilot. Khoth bowed. Jace tried not to feel like his heart was falling into his feet as he took off again. He watched Khoth as the Fel commander became smaller and smaller, and then Khoth ducked beneath the overpass and was lost to view. Okay, we're going to take a little break now. Woo! All right. Okay, so what we got here? This does not make sense to me why my nose becomes just filled even though it's not normally. I love Gehenna too. I had one idea for her that was more Siri, I guess, or really like Master Chief and I'm blanking on her name. Oh my god. But she just ended up being adorable. She just totally ended up being completely adorable. So I don't know. The Crimson Sorcerer says, I get the feeling that Jace enjoyed watching The Mandalorian. Jace only watched the first few episodes. I have a very complex relationship with Star Wars, to be honest with you. And I didn't even see that actual episode. I think I know what you're talking about, but I have a very hard time watching Star Wars because of my own headcanon and my own feelings about it, and it's ridiculous. I know. I know. I know. So it's like, woo. So welcome, Jessica. I'm so glad you're here. Thama is also a big one of my favorites as well. Um I just she's awesome. She plays a much bigger role than I thought. And Dr. Hater really is a lot of fun. He is truly a lot of fun. Okay, let me just take another sip, and then we'll continue on with the second half of 64. It's a good time. All right. I was better at this in the flesh than in the mech, Jace realized with a sad laugh. He knew it was because before Khoth was still with him, or at least still with a part of him that could protect the Fel commander. Now they were apart, and anything could happen. How the hell did I get through the thing in the hive? Jace wondered. He felt stretched thin at that moment. He knew why. All the broken systems in the building he piloted past were calling out to him. Oh, hold on a second here. Let me just fix that. All the broken systems in the buildings he piloted past were calling out to him. The half asleep AIs that perked up at his mental signals surged towards him. And then there was also the war above him, where he could only see the Osiris and not actually touch the big ship's mind. At that moment, the Osiris's main laser blasted the guts out of another hive. Hundreds of cool were sucked out into the void of space. Now I've got to add some cool to my tally, Jace thought. I'll take over the BFG, Jace, Gehenna suggested. Sounds good. Give them hell, Gehenna, he told her. You too, she giggled. He rounded the last building and came up right to the edge of the underpass that ran along the southern flank of the compound. Not 25 feet away, the Cool were setting their goo bombs and making their plans. Let's get their attention. Jace dropped down onto the ground with a clink. His two mighty metal legs made contact with the road. He spun two of his guns on the mech's arms. He started to warm up for the big gun on the top of his head. He began to move. Clomp, 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 clomp. He was like a tank walking. He was making so much noise that even if the Cool were dead, they would have heard him. But they were very much alive. The mech had night vision and heat vision, which helped him see under the semi-darkness of the underpass. But he would have had to have been he would have been able to find them anyways because of the glowing green containers of glue that were attached all along the wall. There were over 100 of them. A trace of unease went through Jace. Surely the field would hold. He had upgraded the system, and the first laser fire impacted Jace's body. The bolt hit, but then ricocheted off the armored chest, leaving only a faint scorch mark. Annoyed, Jace started up the guns on his arms. The gun's barrels rotated with a rattling sound as high-velocity projectiles were spit out and tore through the limbs of the Cool, which were too slow to get out of the way. Cetic's heads exploded. Limbs were shredded from Omul bodies. Cool torsos were simply ripped apart, and their acidic blood fountained everywhere. When he stopped shooting, there was nothing left alive before him. Jace grinned. That, of course, was when the Cool, who had taken cover at his very noisy approach, started firing upon him. He was hit from all directions. The mech was shoved to the right by a hail of blasts, and to the left by another hail of blasts. He had lost his footing as his front was pummeled with yet more blasts, and then someone sent the mortar shell at him. Jace jumped. In his mind, he jumped. In the real world, the mech used its jets to blast off the ground, hit the ceiling of the overpass, which sent him careening back down again. He landed heavily on the right leg. The hydraulics stuck as he tried to stand up. He saw the Cool aiming another mortar shell at him. Oh shit, Jace cried. But where the mortar had been was suddenly a blooming ball of light. The mortar itself was destroyed, and the Cool manning it was blown to steaming chunks. He just saw a flash of blue skin as Khoth moved lightning quick between the pillars that held up the underpass. Don't get cocky, Jace, he reminded himself. Thanks for the assist, Khoth. He didn't get a response back, but Khoth was in the thick of things. He'd killed half a dozen Cool before he'd saved Jace's mech ass, and now he was cutting and blasting his way through half a dozen more. I'm really behind him on the count now, Jace thought. He managed to get his mech's legs straightened out and scan the area. He found 3 Cool hiding behind the nearest pillar. Destroy enough of those, and the overpass would become an underpass with them under the rubble, so he had to use a more tactical approach. The big gun on his head ground to life, and he had the smart missile it would launch lock onto the three heat signatures. If it took out the one pillar, things should be okay. He fired. The missile screamed as it exited the top gun and flew through the air, curving to the right around the pillar before exploding its targets. Cool body parts and blood rained down everywhere. Jace! Gehenna sounded frantic. He found himself focusing on the BFG and the cameras on the defense grid, but everything was going well there. He narrowed back down to Davies, Hayter, and Typhon. According to their comms, all 3 men were doing well, still alive, and taking out targets. Gehenna, what is it? He finally asked her. You've got to stop the goo, she cried. What? He stopped as he focused in on the rapidly pulsing canisters that were set all around the outside of the force field. The blast would take them down to 59%, but they should hold. Sure, the wall itself was clearly damaged and needed attention, but it wasn't like he could get a work crew out now, and the shield wasn't right. He saw now the shield was powered by physical nodes on certain sections of the wall. They were interspersed regularly, giving off power, but there were some that were not giving off power. There were some that were damaged. Too many that were damaged. If all that goo goes off, the shield will fail here, and so will the wall. Oh, I did it in Jace's voice, but that's Gehenna. Jace had the mech running to the goo canisters. The air was alight with laser blasts. He had his arms moving to the sides and in front, aiming and firing at Cool he hardly saw, but shredded as he went. He got to the canisters. There were too many to carry. He picked them up and began tossing them as far away as he could. Another mortar shell hit his back. He keeled over, his cameras on the mech fuzz. He kept throwing more canisters away, but then another mortar hit, and he was down. The last thing he saw before the mech's cameras was the rapidly blinking goo canisters burning a bright and brilliant green, and then there was only darkness. But even before he pulled back to the cameras, he knew that the shield had failed, the wall had fallen, and the cool were coming inside the Maturin compound. That is the end of 64. Woohoo, baby! I think that these battles coming up, what happens, really gave me an idea of just how terrifying the cool actually are. We're having a lot of fun with it. Just the thought of one person, one infection causing, an unstoppable chain that could end a planet really made me realize how terrifying. Plus the body horror of it, which I definitely am taking, obviously, from the Alien franchise. The thought that the enemy is within you, it's just horrifying. Uh, let's watch. Hold on. I'm scrolling up here. The characters are who we really start with in the beginning. How I begin these stories, I actually plan the two main love interests, and then I flow out from there. And there's a lot of caretaking with them because my stories are very much character based, and I do. There's a lot of plot too, but it's mostly about how are they reacting to the situation they're put in. So that's really what makes it cool. So it's a lot of fun to do. It's a total fun to do. I did, and I love Emily Baker. I watched it too. I totally watched it too. That was something else. I love her. She's wonderful. What a compliment to say that we're similar in tone. So I'm like, oh, that's a wonderful Emily D. Baker. For those of you who are really into like breaking down the law, especially when she does a lot of pop trials and also she's just really, really good. I totally recommend her. So Ivy says, one of the favorite things about my writing is that while I focus on the main pairings, I develop the surrounding relationships as well and love seeing the interactions between everyone. When I first started, I was not good at this. I swear to God, like my characters had no friends, had no history, had no nothing. They just met each other in a vacuum. And it was just ridiculous. And at first, I was having them a backstory only for the main, like I was a younger character and then the older character was like a stuffed shirt. Like they didn't have any like history or background. It was like really interesting to watch my progression to realize that, oh yeah, both characters should have an arc. They should have really good friends. They should have enemies. They should all have arcs and this should all be very interesting. And I think that that's just made it a lot better. I think anyway. And I mean, as much as this is, Khoth and Jace's story, we are getting to see other points of view. We'll see an amazing chapter with Thama coming up, or her defense of that residential building. We'll have another chapter with actually Typhon to sort of understand where he's coming from, which makes him harder to hate, which I'm sure my friend Matt will be like, why? So I think that's the fun of it. It makes it feel more three-dimensional, more real. And it just makes you love the story more, I think, anyway. So Sophie's asking, not sure if you answered this already. Is the prequel manga the secret project then? No, the secret project is in fact the whole of the podcast. You'll see. You'll see. But I am telling you about that because it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's so good to see all of you here, by the way. Yeah, it's like, luckily, we just go on to the next chapter, thank God, for that one. Everything gets, like, basically, like, recycled in a lot of ways, I think. You just find new ways of looking at it. I was just watching stuff for Starfield, and I was like, everyone's like, "Oh, it looks like No Man's Sky or has Mass Effect or Star Citizen." I'm like, "Yeah, it's all of those things mashed together with Fallout and Skyrim." And it's like, there's reasons why there are fantasies that just speak to us, and we're trying to find our iteration. I think that that's very really true. I no, I'm not coming up with something new. So Ness says, I'm imagining Jace visiting the planet that got destroyed just to give himself perspective of how bad things can get. Yes, very much so. That's very much so. Yeah, Doctor Who, I think, has leaned into that strength by definitely making the companions far more important. I mean, they always were, but um, all this stuff. Lily, have fun at your wedding. That's gonna be good. So, here we go. Oh, I think that so Timid Reader has asked, "Have you ever thought of writing a tale where you are the protagonist, or maybe the adventure you wish you had?" As a middle-aged white woman, yes. I think I do that all the time with this. I get to pretend to be someone completely other. I wish I could do all these things. Somebody who just has never been able to be very athletic, never been conventionally attractive, always been more in my head. All these very active people like, you know, Caden and Jace and Julian and Christian. I would love to be able to like be like that. Uh, so I mean, I think every of these stories has a little bit of in it. There is a very fine line between a Mary Sue and just any other character, I think. Um, so Claude asks if I'm gonna write dark magic. Yes, but not for a while. I have to have an appropriate story that's gonna be strong enough. To be honest with you, it has to be really strong. And it is also hard to write something that is, how shall I say, that's at the end of like a 12 story tale because we need to always have something that can draw in new people too, but we will. It just has to be at the right time, I think. Um, Emma, you'll find out. So she's asking, the suspense for the next podcast is killing me. Is another story from the site or will be a new story? You'll have to see. Next week, make sure you guys are here. I hope there will be a big crowd. It will be neat. I hope. I hope. We shall definitely I want that story to be really awesome. And I'm looking forward to those characters and playing them again, to be honest with you. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Now that the cool may have gotten into the compound, of course, I have to move away from that. And speaking of playing from other characters' points of view, we're now with Jack Parker, Jace's dad, which I didn't really realize. I must love that name, Jack. I use it constantly, especially it's a dad name. All right, chapter 65. No other choice. Meanwhile, on the Osiris, Jack Parker clenched his fists he took in the multiple screens showing in the space battle outside. There were 4 hives left, just 4, but the Osiris was getting low on power, and there were only 3 shots left for the devastating big gun. The Cool had figured out that attacking the Osiris only gave the ship energy to use to power the shields and its weaponry. Should have stopped at your friendly neighborhood gas giant to top up the tanks before we went on this family vacation, Jack said through gritted teeth. Such a review of past actions is only useful for future battles, Flight Commander Parker. It is not useful for the current engagement. The Osiris replied tartly on the screen to his lower right. You may make your recommendations at a later date. You are only here because there is no one of greater rank on board at this time. Jace had told him and Diane that a tart Osiris was a happy Osiris, but Jack was pretty sure that this wasn't the case this time. Both of them were anxious that they were cut off from Jace and now low on power. 4 hives, 3 shots left, Osiris. That's the math. Any lessening of that dampening field so we can reach Jace and get that big gun down on the planet to send death from below again? Jack asked. No. One single word that had Jack's mouth going dry. Only one ship had made it to the planet's surface. Khoth and Jace had taken out a whole hive. They would be able to handle one ship. He hoped. But Jack knew how any battle could go south. And that was his son down there. A son that up until a few days ago couldn't get out of bed some days due to pain. Now Jack and Diane were up here and couldn't even contact their son. Die? Jack barked into the local comms to get the engineer Dai Suzuki. His pleasant face appeared on one of the screens. Sweat coated his broad forehead, but his voice was level. Flight Commander Parker? We have 4 hives and enough power for 3 blasts. Not good odds, Dai, Jack said to the engineer, who nodded. I need more power. Any way to make that happen? Before Dai had even opened his mouth, a furious bit of text appeared from the Osiris. I am in no need of assistance from. You're built to work with someone, with the pilot, Jack interrupted, and you don't have him here right now. I am quite capable of managing my own power systems. The Osiris did not add an exclamation point, but Jack heard it all the same. Actually, I've been studying your systems, and if we diverted power from the shields to the main weapon, I believe we could have a 4th blast, Dai said, pushing his glasses up his nose. The cursor blinked. Well, Osiris, is he right? Jack asked. The cursor blinked. Jack crossed his arms over his chest. Osiris, that is not a viable option, the Osiris finally responded. Why not? Jack's eyes narrowed. Because I am cut off from casting myself into another location, the Osiris answered. Wait, are you telling me that you won't do it because you're afraid you'll die? Jack's eyebrows rose. Draining the shields and powering up the main weapon will leave us exposed for approximately 20 seconds before the weapon can fire, Dai added. I know a lot can happen in 20 seconds, but it's an option. Osiris, that is a very valid option. If we use it for the last hive and coordinate with the other ships in the area, while that might end this conflict, if I am damaged or destroyed, the cool have ultimately won. The Osiris finally responded. How long can that shield on the planet hold before the hive can break through? How long before there's 1,000 ships on Hassian and not just one? Jack asked. Other Alliance vessels should be making their way here. Are they? How far out are they? Will they have enough firepower? You don't know because you're cut off. If Hassian falls, the Alliance falls, everything Jace is trying to accomplish is done. Jack sliced a hand through the air. We need a win here. My loss would cripple the pilot, the Osiris answered. It was a low blow, but it was likely true. Jason tasted freedom mostly from the pain and limitations of his old life. Jack knew that even if somehow Jace survived what was happening down the planet, it would destroy his son at some integral level to be reduced again. But he knew that wouldn't matter to Jace, not enough to stop his son from doing what was right. Jack felt like he was stabbing his own heart repeatedly, but he said, If Jace were here, he would tell you to do it, to do anything to save these people. The cursor blinked. Jack turned back to Dai. Keep looking for options, okay? Contact me at any time. Yes, Flight Commander. Bob and I will do our best. Dai made a salute, even though he was a civilian. Jack saluted back. Dai's image winked out. He glared at the cursor. He was certain that without the Osiris's buy-in, that they could not force the AI to do what they wanted. Only Jace could do that, and his son was not here. Please be okay, son, Jack prayed. He shook himself. There was more than one way to approach a problem. If draining the shields was not an option, then maybe there was another. He wasn't going to stop trying. Get me Colonel Parker and High Commander Stade on the comm, Jack ordered. Diane immediately appeared in a section of the screens ahead of him. Jack! She then straightened up and said, Flight Commander Parker, thank you for the assist out of the gate. Happy to help, Colonel. You need to stay in our shadow for now. That bucket of bolts has nothing that can take down a hive, and the shields are iffy, Jack said, and tried to keep the anger out of his voice. This was not the ship that had been promised, but he knew that sending the rust bucket that Diana and Toshkin were on had been a petty act, but not a malicious one. No one had known that the Cool could get here and attack like this. Now, though, it mattered that his wife was on a vessel that could be cracked open like an egg with a few well-timed blasts from a hive. He had flown plenty of missions where his life was on the line, but Diane had always been safe at the base. Well, except for that one time, the Osiris thought he could rip out her son from her body. He glared at the blinking cursor again. But the point was that now he wasn't just dealing with the possibility of his own death, but Diane and Jace's. Being the one in danger was so much easier. Stade appeared on another screen. He looked ill but determined. He had lost half his fleet in moments. If the Osiris hadn't been there in time, his own ship would have been split open and his people sucked out into the void. So his hatred of humans was more on a low simmer rather than a blaze like earlier. Flight Commander Parker, where is your son? Stade barked. He can restore our defense grid, but not communications with the ground? He saw Diane's expression going arctic. He could feel a cutting remark coming, but Stade's ego was already too brittle to handle much more. Besides, he was on the ropes and he knew it. If he could, he would stayed, Jack replied calmly. We're all blocked from ground support. Until we get rid of those damned hives, I'm betting nothing is going to change. And that also means the Osiris cannot reliably control your ships, so we have to work together the old-fashioned way. Stade's chin lifted, which was a warning sign if Jack ever saw one. My ship will lead in any attack. Then you and your people will die. Jack cut him off. Brittle ego or not, he wasn't listening to this crap. His eyes went to the other screens where the hives spun and dodged. We've got to be smart about this. Here's the deal. The Osiris has 3 shots. There are 4 hives. He saw the grim understanding flow over both Stade and Diane's faces. What are our options, Jack? Diane said, dropping the titles. He was glad. This might be the last time they spoke. A wave of despair flowed through him. He pushed it away. He had always taken chances. Life was lived on a knife's edge, no matter the illusion of safety. Jack scrubbed a hand over his head. As I see it, we have a few options. First, we can try to herd or lure the hives near enough to the planet that the big gun there takes one or more out. Space is vast, Flight Commander, and our shields are low, Stade said. It is unlikely that such a lure or herding maneuver would be successful. At that moment, Stade's ship gave a shuddering jerk. The High Commander nearly lost his footing. Electrical shorts appeared in the nearest console. Jack saw Stade's crew frantically trying to put the resulting fire out. He would have to check in with Dr. Isa to make sure that none of the Osiris's crew were badly injured. But due to the Osiris's unique shields, other than a few jolts, they had been fine so far. True, Jack said. Another option is to get the hives lined up so that one blast from the Osiris's main weapons takes out both, or at least wounds the second through that conventional, less powerful weaponry can take it out. Diane crossed her arms over his chest and gave him a crooked smile. Do you think the Cool will be so obliging as to line up? I'm thinking more that our piloting will accomplish more of the heavy lifting there, Jack answered her. Jack really wished he could take over the Osiris's controls, but as the AI had pointed out, he was a beginner at flying a Paladin-class ship. He had no training whatsoever flying the Osiris. And could he really do better than an AI anyways, even if he had the experience? Logically, Jack would have to say no, but flying and fighting were about more than logic. Sometimes there was luck involved. And AIs didn't deal in luck or fate or whatever it was that made things happen in a certain way at the exact right time. But the Osiris was already putting its ears back and glowering at him. Bring luck up now, and it might stop listening to him altogether. Is there a third option, Flight Commander? Stade asked, frowning in his silence and clearly sensing that Jack was holding back. Jack's eyes slid to the cursor that blinked. If the Osiris wouldn't do it, there was no reason to give the others false hope. He grinned tightly. No. That's it. I need the fleet to help me get the hives to line up or get near the planet. The Osiris will take point as they don't like shooting at us, but we are going to have to all work together. So you are going to be the leader, Flight Commander, a human on his first trip into outer space? Stayed scowled. But then his vessel was struck again and again by fire by the cool. He fell to the ground. Ceiling panels crashed down on top of him. Diane gasped and clutched the front of her uniform. Jack found himself holding his breath. Stayed. Did not get back up. Diet Coke break. Crews swarmed the area. He'd heard a call for medic, and then Stade's body was carried away. Whether it was live or dead wasn't clear. Another Thafel came into the frame. There was blood crusting his temple, and his uniform was streaked with dirt, but he seemed strangely calm. Jack recognized someone that had seen a lot of battles. "What's your name, soldier?" Jack asked. "Are you next in charge?" "Matson, I'm afraid I'm all that's left," the grim Thafel said, riding out the next shudder of his craft. "I see. I'm going to make you the same offer as I did Stade." "I heard your offer. I heard its dismissal," Matson said. Jack grimaced. "Well, if you're not going to assist, on the contrary, I'm going to assist. The Alliance fleet, what's left of it, is yours to command, Jack Parker," Matson said. Jack blinked. "You're different." He hadn't meant to say that, but it didn't seem to offend Matson. Instead, he gave a thin, bladed smile. "I served under Commander Khoth Voor. I wish to do so again," Matson said simply, "and we are out of options." "Right," Jack grinned. "Then let's put it all out there. Here's the plan." As he talked, Matson and Diane listened. This would be their only shot. Jack hoped it would work. Ooh, all right. So we got to see a little Jack action. And then we're going to actually get to see some Davies action. Speaking of it. So this is going to be good, I think. Did I put a Jack instead of a Jace? It should be Jack in this chapter. I'm sure that I've made a mistake. We all know it. Yes, and this was another thing that I'm still learning, and I mean, that it's just sort of funny about this is that I've realized that, Koth, we haven't talked about all the people that Koth knows, when he's come back, and of course he's had has a crew, and so that's when Matson really came in, so that was exciting, and he has ended up being one of my favorites. Okay, so let's finish this chapter up. Woohoo! Hopefully. Meanwhile, in the storm sewers on Yulor, Davies dropped in the Yulor equivalent of storm sewers. It reminded him of a fall in Bethesda. The scent of leaves and other rotting vegetation filled his nostrils. Damp stone and water added to the aromas, but it did not cover the dry, foul scent of the cool. The storm sewers were barely lit from grated openings up above to intermittent lights every 10 feet or so. These lights were a sour yellow color that dimmed and surged at strange intervals. The whole system was under strain. It was confirmation of what Jace had said about things being broken and in desperate need of repair. Davies checked his comm to see where the cool were headed ahead of him. Eerily, like the device that had been used in Alien, the comm showed the cool as green dots, 7 of them, right up ahead. The lines of the sewers were shown simply in 2 dimensions. Unlike in video games, there was no cone of light telling him which way the cool were looking. Davies took out his Dragvas and double-checked that it was working properly. He always checked, double-checked, and sometimes triple-checked his equipment. His life had been held by a thread, and malfunctioning equipment could have caused that thread to snap. Assured that all was well, he started to run low down the sewer. The sewer was 10 feet tall and just as wide. He had hoped it would be narrower. The cool were much bigger than him. It would have been nice to have them hunched over and creeping forward. As it was, they might have to duck their heads, but there was plenty of room even for their insectoid bodies. A smaller space would have made it easier to shoot them, too, but it would give him less room to maneuver as well. He avoided the small river of water that ran down the center of the tunnel. The stone he was on was wet, but there were few puddles, and those he avoided. His footsteps made little sound, but the cool were very sensitive to vibrations. Yet there wasn't time to creep the whole way there. He was certain that they had brought some kind of explosives to get into the Maturin compound, and unlike Jace, he wasn't sure the shields would hold. Jace had done the best he could in a short amount of time to fix this little piece of Hassian, but the Cool had had millennia to know this technology and ways around it. If Jace had had the right amount of time and materials, Davies was certain the young man could have made this place cool tight, but not under the circumstances he'd had. On one level, he'd been slightly disappointed to find that the fellow living in a city whose technology they didn't fully understand and whose infrastructure was failing slowly all around them. Not that it wasn't something Davies had seen time and time again on Earth, but still he'd hoped for better. He was sure there were better things, but not this. At the same time, it had made him more certain than ever that Jace and his crew had something to truly offer the Alliance. There were blind spots that they couldn't or wouldn't see, and a fresh set of eyes could put them right again. Davies slowly slowed down as he neared a curve in the sewer. A brief glance at his comm showed him that the Cool were clustered just beyond the bend, about 25 feet away. There was a line ahead of them, indicating that the sewer was blocked in some way. That was the Maturin compound. Do not go, do not enter, do not collect $200. Davies slowed to a crawl, taking great care how he put his feet down on the ground, heel to toe in a slow but deliberate movement. He stopped as he reached the very edge of the curve. He leaned his back against it and listened. There was the click, click, click of the Cool's chitinous bodies as they moved. The dry, raspy smell coated the back of his tongue and throat. He wanted to vomit, but resolutely breathed through his mouth and not his nose to minimize the smell. Certain that none of them were coming his way to check on what had made those running sounds, Davies slowly peeked out. He drew back quickly again. Two of the Cool, O'Moole, were standing guard, their gazes towards this part of the sewer, though they had been turning back to look at what the others were doing at that moment. He caught a glimpse of them, too. The other five, several caterpillar-like Cetixes and a few more O'Moole, were fastening octagonal canisters to a wall that was covered in a glowing shield. There were various pipes coming out of the wall where liquid and debris from the compound passed through the shield. It must work one way and join the sewer system. The octagonal canisters glowed a virulent green, and though Davies did not know what compound was in them, he knew what they were. Bombs. Davies grimaced. He'd expected this, but he was feeling just how under-equipped he was. If he had a grenade or two or 10, he would have sent those rolling down the sewer towards the bugs and blow them to smithereens. It would likely have set off the other bombs too, but that was fine. No other Cool were coming in this way. The others would take them out. But he had no grenades. He had a Dragvas and a Rahir. But I bet if I hit their bombs with a few shot from the Dragvas, that will set it off, and maybe the others too. Bug splat. He hoped the explosion wouldn't splat him as well. But unless he got them all, he wouldn't want to be alive if they caught him. And hitting the bombs was a better idea than hoping he could hit every Cool for enough damage that they would go down in the first or second go. Davies breathed in and out to settle himself. He never really wanted to die, but he really didn't want to now. Sure, he had accepted it as a risk of the job, but going to space, seeing the Osiris and Yalor, and, well, there was too much to fight for and stay alive for to give up now. Yet he was going to do this, because it really was the only way. And he needed to do it now. They were almost done setting the bombs, and they'd be shuffling back down the sewer to get away from the blast themselves. Then they'd run right into him. Let's get this party started. Davies remembered where the nearest bomb was, and he adjusted his Dragvas so that as he leaned out to take that shot, he was nearly aiming right at it. Except there was something in the way. One of the O'Mooles was already ambling right towards him. The O'Moole saw him, just as he saw the O'Moole. They both froze. Oh, hell. Then Davies pulled the trigger. And if you thought that the last chapter had ended on a cliffhanger, this one really does. I'm enjoying Davies as well. I hope you guys are. So we finished it up. I know. Oh my god. I know I'm gonna have to like figure something out. It has to be like I really this whole like Everdark Academy and this story are just so freaking huge. Like they're so huge I can't really fathom how huge they are. We are so far from basically being near the end. It's just really crazy. It's really, really crazy. I mean I'm so stunned by it all. Yeah, he's not gonna remain one for long. I feel like it was funny, I don't know if I had an idea for him and then it sort of shifted and he just shifted with it. So, it's all good. It's all good. So, these were 2 exciting chapters and we got more exciting ones. I think there's like 10 chapters of this battle, and it's just was so fun because I felt like I really had to show the stakes, and I really had to show all these characters and what they were doing. It just didn't feel to be honest with you, it just didn't feel complete until I did that. So it's all good. It's all good. Um, yes. So most excellent. So I want to remind everybody next week, 2 p.m. That's when Dragon's Reign, the last chapter, is being put up. So it's at Saturday, not Thursday. And we are gonna then have the, after party, which is gonna have, like, you can ask all your questions or your thoughts on Dragon's Reign, and then we are going to have the announcement of the new podcast. We are gonna have some wonderful videos for that, including something called Episode 0, and there's gonna be just a lot of stuff. Um So it's gonna be great. I think I'm really excited. I think you guys are gonna be incredibly surprised, what we were able to pull off, and I still am stunned by it. Yes, Jack and Jace are really the best of sons. They really, really are. They father and sons. I think they have incredibly healthy relationship. I mean, really and truly. Because I did, y they just asked me if I do deep sea creatures as a basis for aliens. Because I was doing time-bound when I was excuse me, while I was writing this, I don't think about it that way, but yeah. So, yeah, it's all good. Yeah, it's pretty much 42 chapters later, the story's just barely getting started. I know, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Okay, so I'm gonna, like, cut it off now, but this was, like, so much fun as always, you guys. Thank you for listening to my huge, incredible rant at the beginning. Really makes me feel better. It totally does. Remember that you can, if you are even an old member, get a month for Wraith Rain for a dollar using the coupon code Caden. So you can get the whole of 139. And also, if you do that, you will get the first 15 episodes of the next podcast. When I think about it, yeah, you will. But I cannot wait to share with you what's coming. Can't wait to share with you the wedding. I can't wait to see your reaction to that and then what's going to come after. I'm just really, really exciting. Thanks, you guys. Really and truly, just awesome. Thank you so much. Love you all. Take care.